All right. So this is the main interface of Policy Map. This is what you'll see after you first log in. And this map is fully interactive, so you can pan around, you can zoom in, and you'll see that the map becomes more and more detailed the further in you zoom, even up until the point where you start to see these building footprints. At the top of the screen, you'll see this location search bar. So this is where you can search by different geographies, such as address, city, county, state, zip. And then using this drop-down menu here, there are also some other geographies you can search by. But if you type in an address, it'll drop a pin onto that location. If you type in a zip code or geography like that, it will then draw the boundary onto the map for you. One thing to keep in mind is that you can only search for one geography at a time. So if you type in a second zip code and then try to search for that, you'll see that it fails. But if you go over to our boundaries menu at the top left, so this houses all of the different boundaries within Policy Map. And for every single boundary that you see in here, there's going to be some sort of data set in Policy Map that's been aggregated to that geography. So if we put zip codes onto the map, you'll see that it then populates all those to view at the same time. You can then click on individual zip codes to get some more detail about them. And then going back into the boundaries menu. So the first two columns on the left are.
Does that go all the way? I'm sorry to interrupt. Does that go all the way down to census blocks? Do you know?
So the smallest geography we have is the census block group.
Yeah. So we don't have census block level data.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
We're probably going to work in the future towards getting a bit smaller geographies like parcels and such.
Right.
But census data wise, we've learned that census block level data is not always, the margin of error is pretty high for smaller areas.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.
Yep. And so the census boundaries are going to be these first two columns on the left. And the smallest geography is going to be the block groups. So I don't know how familiar you are with block groups, but they represent anywhere from 400 to 1,500 people, and they're based on population density. So if you look close to Center City, Philly, you'll see that they're pretty small just because of how densely populated it is. But if we go across the river to New Jersey, you'll see that they're significantly larger. And
wow, that's really great. Yeah, I think this is a little different than a couple of years ago. Have you updated this since 2 years ago when we were on, or 3 years ago?
Yeah, the look is brand new. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks great. Good job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then block groups sit inside of census tracts. So now that I've added those to the map, it's kind of hard to distinguish between the two. But what you can do in the boundaries legend at the left side of the screen here is change things such as the line style. You can change the line weight and even the color. So now that I've done that, it kind of gives you an idea of how the block groups sit inside of the census tract. So this census tract, for example, you can see that it has 3 different block groups that sit within it. And then finally, these years that you see here are what are called vintages. So every 10 years, the census does a major redraw of their boundaries. So we include some older vintages in here if you'd like to go back and view those. But we do understand that sometimes you might need to make a boundary that's very unique and that doesn't necessarily conform to any of the geographies that I just talked about. And so for that, we have what are called custom regions. So that can be accessed at the top of the screen next to the location search bar. And once you're in there, you can view the regions that you've already created, as well as create new custom regions. So there are 3 different ways of creating a custom region, and I'll go through each one. The first one is a drawn custom region. And then there are 2 methods of creating drawn custom regions. The first one is a click to connect points method. So all you need to do is click onto the map to drop points. And you just keep clicking until you've got the shape that you want. And then in the end, you're gonna click on the first point or any point to complete the shape. You can also add multiple shapes to a single custom region. So let's say I wanted to add a second shape. This time we'll use the draw with pencil method. So this is just a free-form way of drawing onto the map. So you just kind of click and hold and drag. So in this case, both of these shapes make up a single custom region. You can then hit continue and give it a name, as well as a description. You can change the transparency and even the color, and then save it. The second method is an assembled region. Oh, one other thing to note about the drawn custom regions is that they're unique because they don't care about any of the underlying geographies unless you are trying to download data for that drawn custom region. In that case, it's going to follow what we call a 50% coverage rule. So let's say we wanted to download data at the census tract level for this custom region. In that case, it is only going to count the census tracts that sit at least 50% inside of the custom region. So for example, looks like maybe this census tract here would be counted because greater than 50% sits within it. But then this census tract over here would not be counted because greater than 50% sits outside of the custom region. And the reason for that 50% coverage rule is just because there's not really a right way of dividing up these geographies. So that's just the best way that we can do it for downloading data. The second method is going to be the assembled custom region. And this gives you the ability to use any of the boundaries in Policy Map and assemble them to make a new one. So let's say we wanted to do it by census tract. Just select that from the dropdown and then click onto the map to select the census tracts that you would like to include. And you can also click to deselect. And then again, just hit continue and then save it. And then the last method is pretty straightforward. It's just a radius region. So you can either click onto the map to drop a point or type in a specific address in the search bar here, and then adjust the radius accordingly. And what's great about custom regions is that you can take them to any of the other features in Policy Map. So once you open up a custom region, you'll see this little menu here. And this allows you to do a couple things. You can view the data in a table format, you can download the data, and you can even get reports for your custom region. And reports are a really great way to view a lot of valuable data about a particular area very quickly and easily. So let's say we wanted to generate a community profile report. You just hit generate report. And then what that does is it's going to aggregate the data for this predefined community profile report. And what this is essentially a demographic report that gives you a snapshot of life in a certain area. So it includes things such as population trends, racial characteristics, age distribution, incomes. So again, just a lot of valuable data that you're able to pull very quickly and easily. And then one other thing to note, so the community health report right now is only available for counties and census tracts. But I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, we're looking to update that in the future to work for other geographies as well.
Yeah, yeah. Right now, it's doesn't do any custom aggregations, but eventually we'll be able to have it run at zip codes and even an aggregation of boundaries.
Wow, yeah, that's super cool.
You can also edit your custom regions through this menu using the pencil icon. And a great feature is the ability to share your custom region. So all you need to do is hit the share icon and then put in the email address of another user. And once you hit send, it will then show up in their custom regions menu. And that's great because then they don't have to go through the trouble of recreating your custom region. And then once they have access to that custom region, they can do everything with it that you're able to on your account. Next, I'm going to go over the base map. So the base map is all of the underlying features of the map. So everything from the roads to the parks, the rivers, all the different labels that you see, that's all part of the base map. And if you go to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see this little base map settings gear. And this is where you can really customize your map for your audience. So we have 4 different base map types. There's the standard, which is the default. That's what we're currently viewing. But we also have light, terrain, and satellite. And with any of these base map types, you can still overlay data on top of any of them. You can also remove certain features of the base map. So let's say we wanted to give the map a cleaner look. We can remove some of these things and even add transit lines if we'd like. So really, once you have the base map that you want, the next step is to just start adding data onto the map. All of the data in Policy Map can be found at the top of the screen under these categories. The My Data tab, so that's where you can find data sets that you uploaded using the data loader, which is something that Phil can show you guys. You can also find data sets that were processed by our data team specifically for your organization, or data sets that were shared with you from other users in here. There are 2 different types of data in Policy Map. So there's point data, which is simply address level data, and layer data, which is data that's been aggregated to geographies. All the point data can be found under the first submenu under each of these categories, starting with housing. So you'll see we have housing locations. And then this little icon here just indicates to you that it is a point data set. And I'll just go through a couple of these categories. Under quality of life, you'll see we have quality of life locations, so food and grocery retail access locations. We have different education locations. And health facility locations. So let me just add one of these to the map. I'll add hospitals so you can just see what that looks like. Again, it's just address level data. So we're looking at all the hospitals in the Philadelphia area. And you can also click onto each point for some more information. All of the other data is going to be layer data. And we have a ton of different layer data sets within PolicyMap. You'll see under demographics, we've got things that you associate with demographics, so population, race, ethnicity, and I'll put one of the more interesting data sets onto the map for you guys. And this was just recently updated by our data team. So this is showing the probability that two individuals chosen at random would be of different races or ethnicities. And you'll see the data is just being aggregated by a specific geography. So in this case, we're looking at block groups. I definitely recommend just taking the time to explore each of these categories because there is so much in here. And for some of these, it really breaks it down and gets very specific. So for example, we have median household income by race. If you are looking for something very specific and are having trouble finding it in these categories, what you can do is use this data search bar here and type in a keyword. So if you type in Medicare, it'll pull up all the different data sets relating to Medicare. At the top right, you'll see a link to our data directory, which is a very useful link. So this is a list of every data category in PolicyMap. And it sort of gives you a broad summary of what you'll find in each of these categories. So all the different geographies that are available, as well as the years that are available, and the source. So if you click on the source, that will then take you to our data dictionary.
Wow.
And this is where you'll find more detailed information about each of these sources and how the data was processed. We do like to be as transparent as possible at PolicyMap, so we provide very detailed descriptions for each of these sources, and even the link to the raw data, if that's something that you're interested in viewing. So let's go through how to customize data. So I'll add, let's do health insurance coverage, total uninsured, and let's go over to Maine. So at the left side of the screen, you'll see the layer legend. At the top is going to be the title. So it shows that we're looking at estimated percentage of all people without health insurance between 2016 and 2020. If you click on the little eye icon, it just gives you a bit of a description about the data set. There's a link to the source, so this will take you back to that data dictionary that I just showed you. You can change the year. So if we wanted to go back in time and look at the data from 2011 and 2015, we can do that. And you'll notice that the title updates when we change the year. And you can also change the variables. So that's how the data is being shown on the map. So we could look at just the number of uninsured people. And each data set is going to have different years and variables that are available. It just depends on what we were able to pull from the source. The shade by is the aggregation level. So this tells you what geography is being shown on the map, as well as the vintage. One thing you'll notice is that as you zoom, the shade by will automatically change. So right now we're looking at census tract level. If we zoom out, it will switch to zip code. But what you can do is you can lock in a specific shade by using this lock icon. And then if you zoom, it won't automatically update that shade by. If we go into ranges, so the ranges that you're seeing are in quintiles. So it's taking the total number of geographies. The default's always at the national level. And what it's doing is it's laying them out in a horizontal form or a histogram based on where the data is occurring. So what this is saying is that at a national level for this data set, 1/5 of the data sits between 13.48% and 100%, and then 1/5 of the data is in here, and then so on and so forth. But what you can do is you can go in and manually change these cut points. So let's say we wanted to focus on areas where the uninsured population is very low and very high. We can do that. So now instead of looking at what seems like random cut points, we've really simplified it for our audience. And then you can also click onto these ranges to isolate geographies. And then one of our favorite features is the ability to not only change the color, but you can also invert the colors. So right now, the dark is showing a high uninsured population. But if we invert, now the dark areas are showing very low uninsured population. So it's really shifting the audience's attention to those areas instead. And then with point data, you can customize the points a little bit to make them stand out on the map. And most of the customization can be done using the filters. So in this case, we're looking at hospitals and we can filter by, total number of beds. So let's say we only wanted to look at hospitals with greater than 100 beds. We can do that. And you can also filter across 2 different categories. So if we just wanted to look at children's hospitals with greater than 100 beds, it doesn't look like there are any in Maine, but you are able to do that, which is nice. You can also add multiple point data sets to the map at the same time. So we can add public schools. And then if you wanted to print this map, all you need to do is go to the print icon, and that will open up the print modal. And you'll notice that this map is also fully interactive, so you can pan around and you can zoom. And the reason for that is because exactly what you see in this print modal is how it's going to be exported. And this does give you the ability to customize it a little bit, so you can move around the legends. You can edit the title if you'd like, change the text size. You can remove the legends, and then once you've got what you want, all you need to do is hit export and it will download a copy for you. One other great feature is the ability to clip. So if you open up a certain geography and hit clip, it will remove all the data outside of that boundary. And then again, if you go into print, it'll show the map exactly as it's showing in the main interface. You can save your map using the save icon, and then that'll show up in your view saved work folder. And then the last thing I'll show you guys is the share features. So right now, the link and email share features are currently available in the legacy platform. We are sunsetting the legacy platform at the end of this month. So once that's done, the link and share, or the link and email share features, will be available on the new platform. So you'll be able to just send a link to another user or email it, and they'll be able to access it that way. All right, I guess, Phil, I'll turn it over to you to share some of the more advanced features.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think our goal is to really give you an idea of the basics. And as you can see, there's a lot of things you can just generally do with Policy Map. Adding data, making those custom regions, getting a report of that data are really big steps initially. It's probably going to get you a lot of answers of how to get some of the data that's in the tool. We can pause for a moment if you guys want to just answer any questions you might have about what you're trying to do. What I'm going to show you next is really probably a little more than just making a map. It's really about how to use data spatially and then some of the cool things you can do with that data.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where we want to go. You've got some pretty sophisticated users on here.
Awesome.
And so all of this is good news. And then if I could get one of you to just fill in one gap for me, and because I can't remember what it is. Can we, what of this can we use in like marketing or presentations or whatever? I mean, are there restrictions? Like if we go public with something, is there something I have to be aware of? I mean, I just don't want to do anything that gets us out of bounds with your user agreements.
Yeah, sure. I think the only thing we ask is if you use any maps or exports, like printouts and such, you keep the logo on there. And if you use data and analysis and such, just cite it somewhere in your footnotes. But otherwise, we're pretty transparent and open about using the tool and data.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so let me share my screen, and then we are going to talk a little bit about what else you can do in Policy Map. Is your team in the Birmingham area? Are you guys
actually they're really scattered all over the place? I mean,
awesome.
you've got a wide variety in here, all over the country, actually.
All right. Well, then I'll go down a little south, and we'll play in that area for us a little bit.
Excellent.
So the mapping interface is neat because the goal of the tool itself really is to give you this ability to visualize data, and kind of Aaron showed you that, once you add data, that legend and the ability to customize that data is just so more powerful because you're able to isolate parts of the data, make the cut points the way you want to present data. But there's some really neat functionalities behind it. Sometimes you want to see how data intersects with each other or interact with each other. And what you'll get when you first use a tool is that the default view is what we call the single layer view. And all that means is that if you look at something like uninsured data, just an example, the default view is trying to show you different colors, and those different colors then represents different percentages of people that have health insurance or not, right? But sometimes maybe you want to find out, of this percentage of people without health insurance, how does that number, that data, look against other variables? people in poverty, people in areas of affordable housing, people that have different types of health problems themselves. So to do that, you're going to switch the view from single layer to this multi-layer view. And what this does is a couple of things that's really important. The first is that the default is always going to try to aggregate data at the smallest geography possible. And so in this case, it's census tracts. The problem with that is that at this view, it would crash most browsers because there's so many vertices and tracks to try to display. So there's two ways to get around that. The first is to either change the boundary in this menu here to larger geographies, meaning that if I were to change to counties, it'll be able to draw the boundary itself. But if I were to, let's say, go down to it will also then give us the ability to see data at smaller geographies as well. So that's the big difference between the two. If you are doing this at a national level, sounds like you have a good team from all over the US. So you probably need to do a bit of this analysis, maybe initially at the county level, but if you are to zoom into a neighborhood or a county or a smaller area, you can change that to smaller geographies.
Got it. One of the things we did last time was we actually had some interesting other maps, and they came to us in the form of I think they were called Tiger files. I'm not even sure what the origin of them was, but I think probably just generated from some GIS program. And we were able to layer those in. Now, we didn't do it on in a big way, but we just kind of tested it out, and we did it right near the end of our work. And is that still available to us, those kind of things, to upload our own maps? Or I think last time y'all had to help us do it. I can't remember what happened.
Yeah, in the case of the boundary files for those Tiger files, yeah, you'll still need to have our data team load that. If we did load them, they probably will still be in your My Data tab under Share with Me. So I believe Brian's team was the one that loaded your initial data sets. So they should still be there. If they're not, yeah, there's definitely an option and a process for us to load additional data for you as well.
Yeah, we may not even need those anymore. I mean, I think we were just kind of fiddling around with things, trying to figure out how we could best use the tool. And part of the challenge is, healthcare touches so much, and there are just, I think what we were actually looking at the first time was the political boundaries and how those set inside of our sort of catchment areas. So if you're working in a big hospital like UAB in Birmingham, for example, where do those people come from, and then how does that impact in the political geography, right? In the I can't remember if we did house districts or what we did. I don't remember what we tried to do, but those kinds of things are not not unusual. I mean, they are unusual, but yet are pretty valuable to us when we're going out and doing, depending on which one of our groups is working in it. I mean, it could mean either a lot or nothing, but those are the kind of things that we look at. What were the limits on those? As I recall, there were some limits on that.
You can still download that data. That's really a good point. I'll come back to that because I'll show you guys how you can actually identify data at the legislative or even congressional level where a hospital might sit in, and get data for those individual legislative member or congressional districts.
Nice.
Just to build some really neat data set to reach out. But I'll show you the last part of this analytical part, and then we'll cover that really neat download part, and then you can see how that works.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the multi-layers, again, the goal of this is just to give you the ability to overlay multiple layers of data, and really it's the ability to start looking at neighborhoods and seeing how you identify certain places in the neighborhoods based on data. So in the case of something like uninsured population, it starts at 0, maxed at 100%. You can slide the slide bar left and right, and you can enter your numbers in as well. So think of the left as greater than, and think of the right as less than. So if you're trying to find places that have greater than 10% of the people without health insurance, the map redraws, and now only census tracts in purple are tracts that have at least 10% of the persons without health insurance. So it's much different than the single layers, when it's trying to show you multiple colors. It's going to show you one color. But the neat function of this is that one color then is up to you to start seeing how that data intersects with another. So from this, we can say how many people are living in poverty, So the next layer that appears, it is also at 100%, but we're still on the map side at the cut point of 10% uninsured. And so from this, we can, again, change this number to say, at least 20% people living in poverty. And so on the map, only places that meet both criteria of at least 10% uninsured and at least 20% persons living in poverty. And then from this, we can say how many of them are, I think we have voting age. Persons in voting age, which is really is just 18 or up. So same idea. We're still looking at on the maps places that meet 10% uninsured, 20% persons in poverty, and 100% of voting age. And so again, from this, we can look at maybe no more than, we'll do the other side of that spectrum and say no more than 75%. And so what the map is showing you is places that meet these three criteria. And the goal of this is that it allows you to take a neighborhood and start identifying places that meet really specific criteria and start really understanding this parts of Birmingham that are affected by these very specific criteria you created.
That's really interesting. So, and then all of the data sets that are available, you could theoretically, I mean, not all, but I mean, you could pick whatever variety of them that you wanted to.
That's right. Yeah. So the multi-layers allows you to do up to 5 layers of data. And the
Okay.
reality is after 5, you're not going to get, you're
Right.
going to get too specific. So this ability to use 5 is a really neat way to kind of filter down to these places like that.
That's excellent. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then the last part that's really neat about this query is that the default query that you see here is what we call an AND function. And it just means that these places meet all 3 criteria. But the neat thing is around the neighborhoods, you can still click onto them. You can still see how some of these places meet maybe a handful of criteria or even one. And so understanding this, the whole neighborhood might be just as powerful as just identifying these places. And so in the legend, it allows you to do that. You're going to change the query from an and to an or. And the or does this overlap of all 3 layers.
Maybe you haven't gotten to this yet, but one of the things that we are, especially in one of our groups, are particularly proficient at is geospatial analysis. Like we'll look at a particular address, if you will, and then create, whether it's inside of a census block or whatever it is, create some unique looks at different types of individuals coming into a particular jurisdiction. I'm not asking you to answer the question, just have in your knowledge, I mean, have you, has anybody used the tool with their own, sort of big data sets as it relates to this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you can do is the thing I'll show you with the legislative districts, which is you can upload data of your a portfolio or so, and then join all this information from the congressional member that they're in, the census tract that they're in, but then also data of how many people are voting age in that area, how many do not have health insurance, how many live in areas that are full of housing, or any of the other indicators at the same time. Yeah, so there's definitely a possibility to take your data, add it into Policy Map, and then join that to any of the data sets in Policy Map as well.
Yeah, that sounds super cool. Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so the OR feature is really neat. And again, the goal of this is that instead of just seeing just the places that meet your criteria, and I realize why my tool is really slow. I'm in my testing phase because we're testing the data loader. But the OR allows you to not only see the places that meet all 3 criteria, but you get these really neat perspectives about the surrounding neighborhoods of places that meet just 2 criteria or 1 criteria, and just get a better understanding of why those places across the entire neighborhoods are changed and different. So the multi-layer is really neat. The goal of this, again, is to give you a tool that you can do a very simple spatial analysis of data, meaning that you can add multiple layers and see how those data sets intersect with each other or interact with each other.
Okay, this is great. Does anybody on our side have any questions before they go on?
No, I don't. It's incredible.
Yeah, Andy, Andy, I knew you'd be interested in it. Andy's our marketing guy, and really across all of our organizations. And Andy, we found, as you might well imagine, I mean, from just on the healthcare side alone, we can, you can take what feels like sort of a normal presentation that you're making to a customer and turn it into something just utterly customized for them.
Oh,
And
wow.
likely show them things that they've never seen before about their catchment area or their MSA or whatever it is
Sure.
that they have
Sure.
that they're capturing from. And it often, if you do it live, it often elicits comments like, "Hey, can you look at this?"
Yeah.
or "Can you look
Oh,
at
I'm
that?"
sure.
And
You
then you
got
end
them
up
sold
with
at that point.
really an interactive conversation. So that's one of the many things we want to do with it. And then we want to be able to blend Andy, some of Catherine's stuff into this, but also some of our geospatial stuff. And so it really reaches across all three companies.
Yeah.
And we just have to kind of sort through it and figure out how do we make it most useful for each of the three groups. For instance, again, we already know that the healthcare side works because we did it successfully the first time. But again, I mean, going forward with everything else, I mean, having this legislative district thing where you can just pull up demographics or pull up, because if we're making a pitch to, XYZ person and as much about their legislative district
Yep.
as they do or as their staff does, then you can almost always really blow people away, pretty much no matter what your presentation's about, just by giving them information that they've never seen before and never even heard of before. And occasionally you'll get them arguing with you, right? Like, well, wait, where'd you get that? Or how did you do that? And those kinds of things. So anyway, that's the reason I was asking about how I couldn't remember how we have to note the policy map data sources if it's in a presentation or if it's in a written presentation. So
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, that demographic report that Aaron showed can be done for legislative boundaries too. So if you wanted to do a congressional district or a legislative district, it'll aggregate the data. And sometimes some census data is already aggregated to those congressional districts, so the numbers will already be there. But if you're working at a much more state level and you're looking at legislative boundaries, this will aggregate the data for those legislative boundaries as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can really make an impact here. And Andy, thinking about some of the disparate impact stuff that we look at, whether it's, in Gwinnett or in, I don't know, Cobb or something like that, just knowing those differences and being able to speak, if we're testifying or whatever, being able to speak with authority about, the differences on a county by county basis certainly is interesting, but when you can get in and start talking about, well, member John, versus member Melanie, and being able to say, you guys have a completely different demographic on this point.
Yep.
And you can almost always win the arguments, or if it's not an argument, but win the day just by doing that. And so, I mean, it's
oh man, yeah.
It's
data is power.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, so just let me show you one last thing, and I think you guys have a really good sense of some of the things you want to do. I won't show you the data loader, but just understand the way the data loader works, and Aaron gets to see the new data loader as well. This will probably be out at the end of this week, but the old version is in legacy. So what this really does is it's what we call an address data loading tool. So if you do have data at geographies, like as those Tiger files you mentioned, our team will load that. It'll be a different process. But if you have a portfolio of addresses, be it members you're trying to work with or markets trying to work in based on those users and clients, the data loader allows you to upload that data. And then once it's here, it will be in your My Data tab up here. as well as, again, you can share data sets that were loaded into the tool for you from other users as well. So just like the custom region feature. And then once it's here, though, what you can do then is take that data. So this is our customer-based data, and join it to any of the data that's in policy map, as well as the boundaries. So let's say you wanted to find out of these addresses, how many of them, what congressional district they sit in. And then from this congressional district, maybe something like I think we'll do something simple like racial characteristics for that area. So the number of persons of color or just of Asian descent in that. So what you do is you add those two parts of data together, and then depending on the area you want to download for, or if you just want to go right into the download modal, those are two different ways. So if you're working on the map and you say you wanted to download just for something like Alabama, you can use the location bar in the very top to identify the state, and then this will open up eventually. This is what I get for being in the testing site. This will open up our info bubble, and then from this you can click the download button. And then what this will do is it'll take you into the sidebar, which you can do the download either by all the persons of color download, all of the customers download, or joining those two things together. And I'll show you this in a little more detail, but I just want to show you how to get to it from the sidebar. Otherwise, if you just want to go to the download function, go into the modal on the very top. This will bring all the data that we had from the maps into the modal. And the same idea, the difference now is that you can change the data in here. Let's get the number of people that are of color, and then we can change this from Alabama to congressional districts in Alabama. And so what this is going to do is give us, in this case, number of customers in the state of Alabama, and then the congressional members that that each address sits in, and then in this case the number of persons of color in each one of those congressional districts. So depending on how you want to download, human readable is just a really simple file. You can download it locally and you can have it emailed to you. I'm hoping to do this live, and we're going to see how this works. I'm going to take a quick pause here. Since I'm making this emailed to me, it'll be sent to my inbox here. I'll just do a quick pause. And so what this is probably one of my favorite features, because what you're doing here is you're taking an address data set, be it an address data set that's already in policy map or one that you uploaded, and you're now joining it to data. And that data can be anything from the data sources that we have up here, but also the geographies of that data as well. And
so is this an actual address thing, or do we, speaking of geographies, because we do the geospatial stuff, so we're pretty precise, can we actually load the lat long, or do we need to convert it to the actual 911 address?
No, you can load you can load the lat long. So we'll take latitude longitudes in your file as the column, and it will send that to us. Yeah. So this is really gonna take it
to what decimal place can I do lat long?
I don't think we have an actual limit, which is
okay, because I have some that go to like the 10th place.
Yeah, I think we'll still take it.
Wow. Dang.
Awesome.
So this is really one of my favorite features. So this data set is it's our customer file, but what you get is this is the customers that we have in Alabama, the congressional district that each customer sits in, and then more importantly, the number of persons of color in each one of their districts. And so what we've done is we've taken a point data set we've uploaded using the data loader and joined that to data that's in policy map. And we've just picked a very simple one like congressional districts, but now we're getting information about each one of these clients. And so what you can do here is basically in the interface, continue the download. So maybe it's not persons of color, maybe it's how many people, what's the housing value in that area, what the percentage of people have asthma in that area or arthritis, because now you're just taking data in policy map and you're joining it to your point database or address database. And so just like you mentioned, Greg, is that you're coming into the discussion with just a wealth of data about your portfolio that you're building data into.
Do we have COVID data in this?
We do. So just understand that I believe as of April of this year, the CDC really started underreporting. Well, in general, the country is underreported cases and such. But I believe you can still.
We're gonna get canceled if we're not careful here, guys.
Yeah, right. I was gonna say, is it accurate?
I mean, it's accurate up until April, really, because that's when the last time it was fully updated from the CDC. We still do updates for cases and such into the tool, but I'm always worried about the accuracy of that data now because again, the underreporting that occurred after April this year.
Yeah.
But it's all here. So the neat thing is, yeah, you can take any of the data and policy map that you join and join it to things like vaccination rates, which is by state, and then testing and cases and such and deaths as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I do apologize. I am in my testing site, which is why it's taking forever. But that's really the big stuff that I want to show you. The two things, the multi-layer maps is just a very powerful way to see how data can intersect with each other visually. So it is that chance for you if you're presenting this map and saying, hey, this is the area that we worked in, and this is where just these parts of the neighborhoods are intersect with different types of data. Allows you to do that. And then on the other side of that coin, the download function, giving you the ability to download data that's in policy map is very unique.
Just out of curiosity, speaking of that whole COVID thing, we don't really play around in that space much, but it does bring up another point, and it's the one I just made. Do you guys ever find yourselves in some controversial situations? I mean, is that a thing? Or I mean, the data to us, the data is the data, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's you get to a place like this where you have states that have no data. Yeah, I mean, we're just pretty unbiased because we're just presenting data as it is.
Sure.
Generally we'll get questions of people about why a program validates this and that. And the good news is we're just the middle person that provides the data, so we can always point back to the source. And
yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, so if you're using data in policy map, you can use the data because in the end you're presenting the data in your analysis.
And I guess it's just our interpretation of it anyway. You know,
that's exactly right.
The data is the data, and how we look at it might be something different than another person looks at it. But
that's exactly right.
I think that's one of the great things about the tool, honestly, is that it really boils everything down to the data is the data, right? And you can't. I think it helps us because it is sort of independent, and we don't have to really argue that point. We just say, well, look, I mean, here's where they get it from. You guys are, like you say, you're kind of independent in this as well. You're just gathering the data and presenting it in a useful fashion. So
yeah, and we vet our data too. So we're not just pulling random unverified data sets into the tool. So generally we do a lot of process to make sure the data is validated. And then of course, when it gets into the tool, validate the accuracy of the data as well. All right. Yeah. So you can see there's a lot you can do in here. We do have a full tutorial that does walk through all this. We'll send you the links to some of those features, mainly, I believe, the multi-layers and the points with layers that we showed here. They're really cool, but they are very powerful, and they might not, you might not pick it up right away. So there's a couple of easy tutorials that'll walk you through. Of course, you can always email us at any time if you get to a place where you want to try to do some of these more complicated things. We're happy to jump on a quick call and kind of walk you through manually each one of those steps as well.
Well, I don't have any more questions. Of course, I've seen it before. Most of you guys are new to this. JD, I think you moved around in it a little bit back in the day, but do any of y'all have any questions of the guys while we have them?
Boy, I don't. I just my wheels are spinning. It's pretty cool stuff. Wow.
Awesome.
At this point, it's just me wanting to play with it.
Yeah. Aaron will get you guys all set up shortly. And then, yeah, as I said, we'll share the video, we'll share some tutorial links. But if you get into a place where you're fumbling around and you're just not sure what happened or so, give us a call or send us a quick text about or email about it, and then we'll jump on and help you out.
Awesome.
All
Well,
right.
Phil, Aaron, I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you again for not only all your time, but congrats on the great work that y'all have done and what you've accomplished. And we look forward to kind of jumping in and doing it our way and see if we can do some good with your tool sets.
Fantastic.
No problem.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks everyone
absolutely.
so
Thanks,
much.
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks,
Yep.
everybody.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate y'all.
You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.